Hello, and welcome. We are going to go ahead and get started right away with a story that is just made for music educators. And Deborah Fajerman is the author. And I don't know if she actually did that with music education in mind. But when I tell you that this is one of my favorite lessons to use to begin teaching my students about the fundamentals of music, it 100% is. And I've been doing this now, using this story, for at least the last 7, if not 10 years. Suffice to say, I've read it a whole bunch of times. It's basically how I start all of my kindergartners off for sure, how I review with my first graders, and most likely my second graders. So let's go ahead and jump right in with how I used to do it, which I still think is a wonderful way to do it, especially if you're only really trying to teach the fundamentals. And then we're going to go through a way that I do it now and how it's a little different. So as always, this lesson is going to be a part of a membership that I'll talk about later on, or just grab a notebook and a piece of paper and a pencil and write down all these ideas, because there are a lot for this. So let's go ahead and get started. The story is called How to Speak Moo, Deborah Fajerman. Again, if she wasn't planning it for music teachers, she must have been. She must have been. The cow language is called moo, and every single word is moo. So you think all moos sound the same? Well, think again. And what I would usually do is I would tell my students that once my hands go down, they're going to moo along with me. But once my hands go up, we are done. This expectation has to be high, as I learned over the course of many years. This has to be a high expectation, or it will descend into chaos. So just fair warning, yeah, okay. Moo can be so loud, it's heard for miles around. Moo! So fun, I love it. And moo can be so soft, you hardly hear a sound. We go through a whole bunch, and obviously, as music educators, our little brains just went off and went, oh, forte, oh, piano, dynamics, right? It not only talks about dynamics, all right, it talks about pitch. So we have high pitch, moo, and low pitch, moo. I use when cows are jumping on a trampoline to talk about staccato, all right? I also use, let's see, later on, when a cow's in a rowboat, gently glides along, which makes its moo as sweet as a song. It's perfect to talk about legato. All right, by the end, and then there's just some things that you do along the way, like cow on a skateboard path is bumpy, moo is jiggly, cow is jumpy. So fun, so engaging. It's easy. And every time what I do is I'm either putting my hand down or I'm doing some sort of movement. So during the skateboard one, I might have all my students jump and go moo, 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 right? If they're on some wiggly jello, well, then I have my students put their wiggly jello out and I say, okay, now you got to put your cow on top. Moo. It's just fun. All right, some of this is just for fun, and the others is to talk about those fundamentals, right? And by the end, it goes through all the ones that you want. High moo, low moo, soft moo, loud moo. All together, moos make the very best music you ever heard, and just from one single word. That was how I used to teach it, right? And in my philosophy, the way that I teach is always through movement, right? In my mind, movement is music and movement is learning. So I combine those two as often as I can, all right? And this is something now that as I began mentoring other teachers, I'm realizing it's something that I had to take 5 years at least to stumble into in order to bring movement into every aspect of my class. Movement is how I get my students into my classroom through a scarf dance. Movement is how I get my students out. Movement is how I collect data. Movement is how I get them to sing. I put movement everywhere, and I have found great success in doing that. And I'm going to be leading a professional development that I'll talk about later on, just how I bring movement into every aspect of my classroom so that I am no longer managing my students' behavior, but instead I am preventing it. And if you're someone who is struggling at the idea of dealing with behavior management, then this is definitely going to be a professional development that you're going to want to be a part of. So that was how I used to teach the lesson, and it was easy and it was fun and it was great. But when I started mentoring teachers, I realized that for some, adding movement into every aspect of their classroom, even in small ways, can be overwhelming. And again, this is now from somebody who spent the last 5 years doing it. I didn't connect those dots. So what I've really tried to do is I'm trying to make my lesson plans a seamless experience, not only for the students, but for the teachers teaching them. And what I mean by that is putting movement in where the teacher doesn't actually have to stop and think about adding it in themselves, but it's already added into the lesson. So what I love to do now is I've gone ahead and I've made my slides to go along with this. And what I love to do, because I love slides, and to me, visual representations are just as important as getting our students up and moving kinesthetically. What I like to do is I like to read a little bit of the story, and then go to the slides. And all of this is written in my lesson plan, but you can also just, you know where it's going to be, all right? You'll know where it's going to be. We just saw 2 different cows, and both had 2 different types of moo. Now we're going to listen to a song that you may know. In the song, there's a cow doing loud moos and a cow doing soft moos. Can you hear the difference? Now what I've done is I've taken the song Beethoven's Fifth, a classic, and I've put it together so that we can hear some immediate dynamic contrast, which again, the book is already talking about. Some cows moo so loud it can be heard for miles around, and other cows so soft you barely hear a sound. So what I've done is I've taken this immediate dynamic contrast and I'm going to put it in with our story. Now, again, we want to make sure that I'm allowing teachers to be able to put movement in without them having to think about it. When you're a new music teacher especially, you already have 1,700 things that you're thinking about. You don't need to also try to put this on your plate. So what I do is I have my teachers tap on the cow, because why not? And they'll hear. And to me, why not have the students sing? So easy, so simple, so effective. And then the second part, can you hear the soft moves? And I'm clicking on the other cow. So those 2 dynamic contrasts, immediate, easy. You can just have them listen to it, or why not get them up and moving to it? Now put them together. When you hear the loud moo, stomp around. When you hear the soft moo, tiptoe. Stomp. And maybe saying it along. And it repeats. So why not have your students then be challenged to listen again? Did they hear when it changed from the loud moo to the soft moo? Now, what I love about this is this actually goes along with the scarf dance that I already have up. Now, if you're already one of my members, then you've already seen it, but if not, then check it out right here. Beethoven's Fifth, Allegro con brio. Again, just making sure that we're using this for these dynamic contrasts, but we're also going to use this song for the rest of the lesson because it's also a great way to show some articulation. So again, if you're already a member, then Beethoven's Fifth, Allegro con brio, the whole scarf dance is up and ready. I am going to try to put this onto YouTube, so if I've already done that, then the link will be below. Then we get back to the story. Now, the next part of the story is the high moos and the low moos. So some cows moo high and other cows moo low. What are other things that sound high and low? Now, what you're going to do is, if again, you're using this slide, then what you're going to do is you're going to tap either animals or things. You're going to listen to the sound. And you're going to let your students decide if they're going to drag it over to the low side or to the high side. And you're going to do that for each one of these. Now, you might be sitting there saying, well, that's not really movement, but I would disagree. In my mind, if you have a smartboard, if you have a projector, if you have a Toby, that is classroom candy. And being able to look around, seeing who is either focused and rewarding that behavior. Oh my goodness, Jensaya, look how you are sitting up so tall, your eyes are on me. Can you go and drag that tuba? Do you think it's a high sound or a low sound? Or the opposite, seeing a student who maybe needs a bit of a movement break, who is not necessarily misbehaving, because we don't really want to reward misbehavior, but maybe it's having their mind start to wander. Maybe they're starting to look around the classroom. Maybe they're about to chat with their neighbor. Maybe they're fidgeting in their seat. Can you go and move the whale to whatever you think it is? Is it high sound or a low sound? And that way you've not only set your students up for success, but because this is already in the lesson, you've set yourself up for success. You know that right after this part of the book, which though we love books, and though in my opinion, if you tell a child a fact, they'll forget it in a day, but if you tell a child a story, they will remember it for life. It is a lot of sitting. And a lot of times, that's just not how our students are going to learn. In fact, my whole philosophy is the fact that that's not how they learn, at least not their most efficiently. So you've already added this part to your lesson. You know that at this point, you will be looking for the students to either praise or re-engage, and giving them the chance that they need to move. On with the story. You read the next part and the cow is jumping on a trampoline. Again, so fun, so engaging. Time for us to do some jumping too. You're going to need some rhythms for this. Again, one of our biggest things about being music educators is we're teaching the fundamentals, and those will include some basic pitches. And again, this is just for little kids, right? So we're talking tas and titis. But be careful. If you see a sleeping cow, you need to freeze, right? They're up. They're jumping, and they will be watching for this cow. I don't know why this is so fun, but every time my students see this one cow, even though it's not even like a funny cow, it's like a pretty cow. It's a pretty cow. They laugh. It's hysterical to them. It is hysterical to them. Jump and say the rhythms. Ta, Oh, and it is all timed. So again, the cow, when it comes out, is a bit of a surprise, right? If you're somebody like me who just loves adding animation to your slides, then you're in good company. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do. So you'd say 1, 2, ready, go. They jump. Ta, ta, ti, 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 ti. Next. 2, ready, go. Ta, ti, ti. They're looking for that cow. 1, 2, ready, go. Ta, 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 ti, ti. They had to freeze. Again, so easy to re-engage them. You're giving them the ability to move, to get the feeling of tas and titis in their bodies. Are they going to have a big difference in their bodies between a ta and a titi? And what I like to do is I have my students do 2 feet for titi, so titi, not just ta, so that it's even more of a differentiation, but then they're also going to be looking for this cow, meaning that they're even more engaged. All right, so on and so forth. I try to be very sneaky where I add this cow, and you can't have the cow all the time. You can't have the cow all the time. Back to the story. The cows never moo when they eat their lunch. All they do is munch, munch, munch. So you might as well drag the rhythms to the ones that make sense. Again, looking for the student that needs a chance to move. You're giving them the opportunity to move as a group, right? And you're giving the opportunity for them to move as individuals, giving the opportunity to praise and re-engage, right? Dragging those. And then back to the story. Next part, the cow in a rowboat is gently gliding. Listen to the music and show that you can how smoothly you can move with our cow. Then you play. And maybe your students are up. Maybe you handed out scarf and then you play. This is still part of Beethoven's Fifth. All right, so the entire part you can go, does this sound familiar? If they've already done the scarf dance, then they've already danced to this. They have already engaged and experienced this. Will they later on want to learn who Beethoven is? My students did. I love that. I love that. One of my most favorite memories from being a music teacher in the last 5 years is walking down the hallway and hearing my students humming Beethoven's Fifth. How magical is that? Having a parent call me on a Saturday to tell me that they were listening to classical music station. They were just flipping through it on their radio and they stopped and Vivaldi's Autumn was playing and their child knew it. Magical. Absolutely magical. Back to the story. By the end of it, we just go through what's your students would remember, right? A big part of my philosophy is giving the experience first and the vocabulary after. So this is where you're just writing down everything that your kids said. They said loud, they said soft, they said bumpy, they said smooth, all those words, right? So now we're going to try to add in the words that we want them to know as music educators, right? When the cows were loud, their moo looked like this. And when it was soft, it looked like this. In music, we have special words to tell us when things are loud or soft. We say forte and we say piano. And then you do this with the cow jumping on the trampoline and you get them to try it. So you put forte into their body, forte! And you put piano in their body, piano. You put staccato into their body, staccato. And you put legato into their body, legato. Then you see which sound makes the most sense. And you have your students, again, looking for the student who might need a bit of a movement break, move along with it. So can we play the sound? Did you notice that it's still part of Beethoven's Fifth? Because why not use it? It's the perfect song to go with the perfect story to talk about the fundamentals of music. It's absolutely perfect. And then your students can go ahead and draw the line from the carrot and from the honey. Is how I have. Now, if you're someone without a smart board, not to fear, I have teachers that I'm mentoring where they just have a projector and they use that on their screen, and that is how they use all of these kinds of materials. And I remember I also had a Toby for the longest time. It is doable. And in my mind, when you have so many classes that you're planning for and prepping for as music educators, nobody teaches as many students as we do, except other special teachers like gym and art. We're so special in that way. There's already so much for us to think about. So I love planning and preparing all Google Slides with every single one of my lessons, not just because I love it for the visual aspects for my students, but because I genuinely believe that it will help me stay on topic. I know that because I've done this, I've given my students, let's see, they're going to be moving to the different music here. So 1 movement break. They can get up individually, 2 movement breaks. They can jump on tas and titis, 3 movement breaks. They can get up for the ta and titi drag and drop rhythms, 4. They can move to the legato, 5. And then anything in between. anything in between. Oh, this one, 6. I've set my students up for success, and in so doing, I've also set myself up to not have to deal with the behaviors that you would genuinely see, not from necessarily students with big behaviors, but the little ones that aren't necessarily bad, but do mean that they're not engaged with us. I just did a professional development session all about this, and I'm planning on doing another one August 15th. So if I already have the link up for that, then that will be in the description below. Because what I've really found through mentoring other teachers is why my classes, why my lesson, why my philosophy has worked so well for me. And again, so much of this I have stumbled into. If you know anything about me, which you might not, but I've stumbled into so much of this. Every time I came up with a problem, either my students didn't want to listen to classical music, okay, well, I'll add scarf dancing. My students were scared to sing, okay, I'll add movement to that. I couldn't gather data in an efficient way, okay, I'll add movement. And I didn't realize what I was doing until I had to teach other teachers about that a moving body is a learning brain. And then I had to come up with all the data to show and back that up, that movement and music belong together. So if you are interested in not only getting the full Google Slides and lesson plan to how to speak Moo the way that I do it for the Soaring Scribes Academy, if you are interested in not only that, but getting 1 free month, possibly 2 free months if I still have my Soaring Summer free link up. If I do, grab that. It's a great resource. But also access to my full curriculum, to over 20 hours of professional developments, to my moving assessments, to my movement breaks, to all of my scarf dances, everything, including a 5-week soaring challenge, where if 20 hours of professional development sounds a little overwhelming to you, yeah, nope, that makes sense. What I've done is I've broken it down to bite-sized pieces, trying not to make it more than 5 minutes every single day, where you will also get access to 5 free workbooks, so that by the time either you're watching this and it's the beginning of the year, and you really want to make sure that you are starting your year on the right foot, or maybe it's still the summer and you have all this time to do it, go ahead, check it out. But right now, leading up to our August 15th session, all about stopping managing our students and start moving them. This 5 weeks will go a long way to bringing movement into every aspect of your classroom, to re-engage your students, to get them understanding the fundamentals more, to get them loving classical music, even getting them to retain more of this information, all while you can stop last-minute lesson planning, trying to gather data that's just not working out, and having to reteach lessons because our students weren't engaged enough in the first place. So with that, if there's one lesson that you bring into your classroom this year, I hope that it is how to speak Moo. And I hope to see you at our August 15th boot camp. Hopefully I remembered to put all the links below, but if I didn't, just leave me a comment. And along with the Soaring Scribes curriculum membership, I also make 3 new lessons every single month. So if there is a topic, a story, a lesson idea that you want me to make a lesson for, drop that in the comments below too. And with that, thank you for watching and happy playing.